Welcome to part 2, or question 2, of the CAE Use of English exam. Now, question 2 has a number of spaces, and in these spaces we must put appropriate words. Now, the missing words do tend to fall into one of the following categories. They tend to be auxiliary verbs, modal verbs, conjunctions, contrasting words, articles, pronouns, prepositions, quantifiers, and I mean much, many, some, few, little, and collocations. And collocations tend to be the hardest, in my opinion, simply because if you haven't heard of the collocation, if you haven't come across the collocation, then you're going to find it very difficult to get the answer correct. And you'll see that on this part. Now, this part is about spacemen's autographs. So if we look at 0, only 12 astronauts actually something foot on the moon. This is a collocation, and you may consider it a phrasal verb as well, but really I would consider it a collocation. And the collocation is set foot on somewhere. And it's the only answer you can possibly put here. And so if you haven't come across the expression to set foot somewhere, then you're going to find this one hard. But fortunately, this is not actually one of the questions. This is a sample question in this particular exam, and it gives you this answer. However, it very well could come up in the real part of it, and so you need to have heard of that particular expression to get that question correct. Let's come on to number 13 now. Some, meaning some of the 12 astronauts, have since something household names. Now, this is another collocation really, and it's with the expression a household name. We actually say to become a household name, and so here the only possible word is a verb, and it's become. You should be able to see that it must be a verb, and it must be a verb in the third form, because this is present perfect. We have, since, and then the third form, have since, become. You should also remember that since is very often used in present perfect, and so it's giving you a clue that you need a verb in the third form. If you put something else in the first form or the second form, you'll definitely get this wrong, but it's got to be the verb become. So some have since become household names, like Neil Armstrong. Something made the original giant leap for mankind. Now, this definitely comes into one of our special words up here. What we're looking for here is a relative pronoun which describes Neil Armstrong. It's touching Neil Armstrong. Now, when we use a relative pronoun with a person, we always use who. The man who made the original giant leap for mankind. So who is the missing word here? And if you want me to explain CAE in simple terms, make sure you test words like who, where, what, which, when, why. All of these WH words tend to be tested in question 2 of the Use of English exam. So make sure you try those WH words out for any answers which you're not sure of, because you probably will find that you can find something which works. So yeah, please remember your relative pronouns and just always try your WH words. So like Neil Armstrong, who made the original giant leap for mankind, and Buzz Aldrin, his co-pilot on that mission. The other 10 are less well known, even something. Each made his own contribution to the programme. Now, here we're using a linking word, and we know it's a linking word because it links two clauses together. The other 10 are less well known, comma, even something. You're looking for a linking word of contrast, so please watch my lessons on linking words and on contrasting words. I've made a lot of lessons on these, and they will help you on question 2 of the CAE Use of English, because they always test them. So the expression is even though. So make sure you know even though, in spite of, despite, although, whereas, while. Make sure you're very familiar with all those contrasting expressions, in addition to the additive expressions like in addition to, and there are many others, moreover, furthermore, those kind of linking words. Okay, let's continue. But to Paul Prendergast, a postal worker from London, they are all pioneers worthy to be mentioned in the breath. Now this is a collocation again, and I hope you have heard of the expression to be mentioned in the same breath, because if you haven't, that one's going to be a very hard one. So sometimes you just need to have heard of the expression, really, or to have come across the expression. But I suppose you might be able to guess that it's going to be a word like same, and same is a quantifier, really. It's a word of comparison. It's a kind of word which they very often test on question 2 of the Use of English exam. So it may be one which you have in your mind ready to try out on those answers which you don't know. So it's ready to be worthy to be mentioned in the same breath as the great explorers of earlier eras, something as Christopher Columbus. Now I hope you can see we mean, for example, Christopher Columbus. We're giving an example here, and I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with the term such as. And the as is what you want to focus on here. Please always focus on these prepositions, because as means that it must be such as. And if you look at these prepositions, they're giving you a clue. Every time there's a preposition after a missing word, it's giving you a big clue what the missing word is. So, such as Christopher Columbus. Okay, Paul's fascination. Now, here you've got 2 possible prepositions which go with fascination. You have a fascination for and a fascination with. But fascination with is used for when you're fascinated with something, and fascination for is fascination for someone. I checked this on Oxford because I wasn't entirely sure about this just before I made this lesson. So please do check in Oxford if you're not sure about prepositions. They're very difficult, and you need to know your noun, verb and adjective preposition collocations. Again, I have a few lessons on this, but I'm going to make some more in future. But I can't possibly cover all of the prepositions because there are simply too many noun, verb and adjective preposition collocations. You just need to know them. So yeah, a fascination for someone, but a fascination with something. Paul's fascination with the subject began in 2000. He attended a convention for people. Now, if you listened to what I said earlier about WH words, if you try one here, you'll get it right, if you try one of the WH words. But really, you can work this out anyway, because we're starting a clause and we're saying when in 2000, yeah? It happened in 2000 when he attended a convention for people. When very often introduces a subordinate clause, or perhaps even a subordinate clause. So, yeah, please be ready to think about the word when before any subordinate clauses. But if that's a bit confusing for you, if you get confused with subordinate and main clauses, and let's be honest, everybody does, please just try your WH words. So when he attended a convention for people, now it's another WH word. A convention for people, something hobby. Clearly we need a pronoun which is referring to people, and we need a possessive pronoun. So the only possessive pronoun which works is whose. But please try your WH words, because once again it's a WH word. He attended a convention for people whose hobby is collecting autographs. There he met Alan Bean, 4th man on the moon, and Ed Mitchell, 6th man on the moon. As he remembers, there were television stars there, people from Bond movies, and so... Okay, here we have an expression which means etc. or... and so forth, and so on. Here we need and so on. I hope you've all heard of this expression because it's very common, and we use it when we mean to say etc. Exactly the same as etc.